Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's probably noon where you are, and welcome to Rising Voices 8. We got somebody new joining us on the ancestor wall. All our blessings to Chris.
Yes.
Love and aloha. Let's start it off with a prayer, shall we? Iko mako e maku I loko o kalani. Mahalo pia naku e. Mahalo nui naku e. Mai kaunali'o. Mai kaunalipo. Mai kahikina. Mai kaulana. E hele mai o e atu e. E hele mai e ku. A hina. A tangaroa. A tāne. E hele mai e kanaha. E kalai. E kanawai. E hele mai oi e au makua. Mahalo ke akua. As above, so below. May it be on earth as it is in heaven. Please, give us this day and forgive us. Please, help us to forgive. Please, no temptation and no evil. Mahalo ke akua. May we be a blessing to each other. Mahalo ke akua. May you be a blessing to us all. Mahalo, mahalo akua. Mahalo for Chris and all the great work and love and light through the years. We are only here because of the great people that have come before us, because we build on that experience of community and we care for those who are coming after us. So welcome to Rising Voices 8. As always with me, Mr. Hank Ferguson.
Good morning, everyone.
Spokesperson for the Kupuna Council of Mokuoke Ave, where we are anchoring this facilitated process. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Julie Maldonado and Heather Lazarus with NCAR and the Rising Voices effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavani and Hank, and for everyone joining us. And a special tribute today and moving forward to someone who was, I don't know if everyone realized, a true navigator of this process and really held this family together and navigated complicated waters, right? And did it with such grace that no one even realized how much she was doing. And that shows her true leadership and someone whose legacy will continue to carry on through this process. And a big thank you. We've been blessed and appreciate everyone's messages this week, and will continue to carry Chris's good work forward. We are excited to be continuing this new path with you all. This is, as we've started out, this is very much a learning community and learning process, and thank you for continuing to learn with us. For those who are able to join, we started off this virtual Rising Voices 8 series a couple of weeks ago with a kickoff event, really in coming together to support each other as community, to continue to foster that sense of community, to talk about the positive actions and experiences people have been having, because those are still there, right? That we can still find those in everyday practices. And to talk about experiences and concerns people have been going through with the coronavirus and COVID-19. And that will, of course, be, even if it's not explicitly talked about, it's kind of like the way we don't always say the words climate change, right? But we can, I think, agree and understand that those are running themes that weave and tie together much of what our conversations are moving forward over these months and beyond there. And we are really grateful for our partnership with the Indigenous Phenology Network, who has graciously been the ones to step up and carry on kind of this torch of as we move forward in our working group sessions now. Today, we're starting off with a recorded session for you to kind of get some ideas going, be thinking about where have we been in the past in actions we've discussed, where are we at now, and how do we continue to move these forward. We hope that you will take some of the conversation today, which folks from the Rising Voices family and the Indigenous Phenology Network and wherever this reaches, that you will be viewing this in preparation for our conversation all together in a couple of weeks on May 22nd. We will remind you several times about that conversation that we invite everyone to participate in and be vocal in. And so we hope that you are somewhere comfortable, in good health and well-being, and that this can bring you some sort of continuity in this community space together, and that you are joining this conversation as we continue to move forward. With that, I'd like to pass it over to the Indigenous Phenology Network leads, who will take us introducing, going kind of around the room who's with us today, and kick off our conversation for you. So Alyssa, over to you.
I'm Alyssa Rose Martin. I'm European descended, work at the National Phenology Network, and have been connected with Rising Voices and the Indigenous Phenology Network for a number of years now, and it has really helped me grow and change how I think about things.
Hello, my name is Katie Jones. I am Blackfeet and a plant ecologist with the National Ecological Observatory Network. Yeah, I'm here to talk about phenology.
Hey everybody, I'm Bryan Miller, and I'm a research ecologist with the U.S. Geological Survey and the North Central Climate Adaptation Science Center, and been my first Rising Voices was Rising Voices 3, and that was also, if I'm not mistaken, really when the Indigenous Phenology Network got off the ground. So I guess we're looking at about 5 years now. Somebody else, like Kalani, could correct me if I'm wrong there, but yeah, I think it's a remarkable achievement that we've been going strong for that amount of time. And, you know, just want to shout out to other folks who have helped to keep this momentum going, like Kalani, like Craig Elovich, like Alyssa, Katie, you know, and of course the Rising Voices crew, and a lot of people working behind the scenes like Chris and others at Lomikai to keep this going. Because I think we've got a lot of successes, and, you know, including the Victory Gardens activities that have been going on for, I don't know, 3+ years, at least within this group. I remember Kalani pointing out in 2017, it was the 100-year anniversary, if I got the dates right, of Victory Gardens. And we've really, I think, repurposed it and retooled it to be relevant and useful for the work that we all do. And, you know, just watching Kalani and Mariah and their community implementing it and doing it and making that change on the ground has been really inspiring. And now to see the work they're doing with taking IPN and making it a broadcast network. So not just, you know, a network of relationships, which is, you know, equally, if not more important, but also having the technological capacity to network people and to have the foresight to do that, so that in times like this, when we're all sort of isolated at home, we can still connect with one another is huge. And again, really humbling to see that foresight and those ideas really come to fruition here. So anyway, that was a long-winded intro, but I have to run to another session, and I just wanted to get in a few words of gratitude and just inspiration, hopefully, for others. So thanks.
As we continue around the room, I'd like to bring in the Rising Voices co-director and the National Center for Atmospheric Research lead, Heather Lazarus, who looks like internet is back up to be able hopefully say a few words.
I still keep getting the message, your internet is unstable. And again, I'll just say, I think that that's a metaphor for the times. Things are unstable. So how do we move forward anyway? Thanks, Julie. Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Heather Lazarus. I am co-director of Rising Voices and started together with Bob Goff initially Rising Voices several years ago. So this is our 8th annual meeting. gone virtual this year. And thank you for navigating this new way of meeting together virtually. And each month we'll have a different topic. So we've come together, led by the Phenology Network this month for our conversation. And I'm hoping that everybody enjoys watching this webinar and look forward to engaging with you all on March 22nd as well. Thank you.
Hoesi Lasamamo. It's nice to see everybody. I'm Paulette Blanchard. I'm a citizen absentee Shawnee Tribe of Oklahoma. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Kansas, working on my dissertation. I'm a UCAR fellow for the Diversity and Inclusion, their Diversity and Inclusion Fellow. And I've been part of Rising Voices for 8 years. I'm one of the few people that have been to all of them, and the only one that's been to all of them as a student. And I am really excited to be part of the phenology discussion, because normally the way RV's set up, I'm in multiple spaces trying to either facilitate, take notes, or in a different discussion group. So I'm really glad to be a part of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Paulette. Ava and then April, if you would like to say hello.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ava Hamilton. I live here in Boulder, Colorado, which was formerly the territory of Arapaho people. I am Arapaho. I'm a filmmaker, a historian, and happy to be a part of Rising Voices. And I'm thankful for the Phenology Network being so close. But to me, nothing is separate. None of the knowledges are separate. The knowledge, climate knowledges, human rights knowledge, all of those activities are all a part of our humanity. And that's what Rising Voices is to me, is the many ways of knowing everything. I hope I said that right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ava. And April.
Hi, I'm April Taylor. I am Chickasaw, and I am a Chickasaw employee office at the South Central Climate Adaptation Science Center. And I'm a tribal liaison for climate change for Oklahoma, Texas, and Louisiana. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Hannah Ponte. I'm a scientist in the climate change program at the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission. And I've been a part of this group just in a small capacity for a few years, but happy to be with you guys today, connecting again.
Bonjour, Melanie Montano, the Traditional Ecological Knowledge Outreach Specialist with Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission in the Climate Change Program. Work with Hannah, and also a member of the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe, and been involved with Rising Voices the last few years, as well as the IPN, but more of an informal basis.
Thank you. We have Mia and then Elena.
Hakuaku Miakakti, Kapapanish, Humoloki Chumash, the Hisiakstunke Aswahil. Hello, my name is Mia Lopez. My ancestral Chumash villages are Siakston and Swahil, and I'm here for Wishtoyo Chumash Foundation. I'm the Cultural Resources protector and cultural educator there, and also the tribal representative for our tribe, the coastal band of the Chumash Nation. And just happy to be part of this group and part of the work that's being done. Thank you so much for having me and for being here.
Hi, I'm Elaine Espero. I'm Filipino, and I've been in Alaska for more than 35 years. So I'm an Alaskapino, and I'm a soil microbiologist and also education outreach. And I've been with Rising Voices from the first Rising Voices until now. I think I missed a couple because of some conflicts, but I've been with, I mean, even though I wasn't there, I was with them in spirit. And so I'm really happy to be part of the Indigenous Phenology Network, because we have phenology research and community science ongoing. So thank you.
Uvana Bob, bonjour. So my name's Bob Raven. I am a meteorologist by training, I guess, but also my wife said I'll never retire because I was interested since I was 5 years old. But I'm really, really excited to be here, and just so grateful that I've been part of the family here for, I think, all except the first Rising Voices, but I feel that everything's connected, and studying weather for so many years, so we know there's no borders for the wind and the air. Sometimes there's more boundaries for landscapes than there are for weather, but weather is interconnected with the ocean is interconnected with the land and the clouds, and people are interconnected as well. So sometimes I feel like I can't do as much as I'd like to. I become a member of the Keweenaw Bay Ojibwe College in the UP of Michigan this year. That's quite an honor as well. And then I've spent some time in Utqiagvik in northern Alaska. So just trying to branch out and learn, and hopefully connect with many different aspects of this world that I can. Thank you. I'm very grateful.
Buenos días a todos. Me llamo Mariah and Joseph. Shalom. My name is Mariah. And I get to live in a beautiful place in the world. Very lucky to live in Hawaii on the Big Island. And very privileged to be able to work with Kalani Souza and the Olohana Foundation as we help to sort of figure out how to navigate these uncharted waters of as we move forward in figuring out how to reimagine and reopen our world after this amazing pause button that has been COVID-19. I am the project manager with the Olohana Foundation, and I also work on Ben Joseph Family Farm, where we are a diversified coffee and macadamia nut farm. We grow all types of things and are showcasing agroforestry and different methods of how to feed community and how to educate our children. And really, these are not that new. In fact, these are very old. And I'm very privileged to have such good teachers from the land and from the Olohana Foundation and all of the folks at IPN that really come together, and just every month it's a fabulous group where we come together and we discuss and we just really talk about all of the things that are happening within our own communities. And just knowing that there's such a big interconnected group of us discussing and looking at these things from critical lenses is really empowering and really hopeful for me and my family. So thank you so much to the Rising Voices community for putting this all together, and much mahalo to Lomikai Media for all of their hard work. And thank you again to everybody. Happy to be here.
Okay, so we're gonna hear and learn for the next few minutes from Dennis Longknife, who has done a short recording on what he's been observing in his home in Montana, and sharing some of the seasonal changes observed, and kind of moving us forward in a couple of aspects of one, us recognizing, right, that none of us are doing this in isolation, in silos, that we are all working together in collaboration, in partnership, and that it's a time to also elevate and come back to the use of storytelling as being a really important tool and form of communication. And I think that we're finding that in really, hopefully, ways that are becoming much more mainstreamed and becoming what the masses will continue to use and leverage as a basic human form of communication. And so I'm turning to Dennis for a few minutes to help guide us on our way.
Hello, my Rising Voices family. I hope you're all doing fine amidst this coronavirus. Around here, it's nothing happening, no positive cases within a 100-mile radius of this area. But anyway, thought I'd let you know a little bit about what I'm currently working on. I just entered into a 5-year agreement with the BLM to do a grassland restoration study project on the prairies here in northern Montana, and this is the first year, the pilot year. We're going to be doing some native grass surveys, native plant surveys, as well as collecting some seeds from the grasses. And we're going to be using these seeds for restoration efforts later on down years, and hopefully get some good results. As you can see around me, I'm kind of high up on a hill. It's actually one of our sacred sites on the reservation here. Up there, a lot of tribal people go up there to fast, and actually the last medicine woman, which is my great-great-grandmother, was the last lady to fast up there to seek power and get some visions. A lot of people tried and failed, only making it 2 or 3 nights up there, but to get the full effect, they usually stayed 4 nights and 4 days. And there's some buffalo out there in the prairie. They're scattered all around this butte. There's a few way out there. There's some over there. Actually, I'll show you a teepee ring right here in front of me. There's another teepee ring over here. And there's another one down there across that little road. And there's a lot of old wallows down here, ancient wallows that were used from buffalo from our ancestors' days. And it's good seeing these buffalo because they're reopening some of these old wallows and they're using them today. Actually, I just came from over there where those buffalo are, and when I came across that field, it smelled just strong onion, so I had to stop and look on the ground, and sure enough, onion plants, or wild onion, were beginning to grow. So I dug up a few and looked at the bulbs. They're just now developing, so I planted it back in the ground. In our grassland restoration project, we're going to be using tribal students and teaching them how to do this kind of work. I could tell you a story of something that happened up here years ago. It was told that there was a huge snake that lived up here on top of the butte. And when tribes would come here to get water, because you see on the other side of this butte is a cold water spring. And that's some of the coldest, freshest water in the whole area. So that's why tribes used to come to this butte. They'd camp along the bottoms, but they'd never come on top and camp overnight because of the large snake. Well, anyway, one time a couple and their kid decided to go on top and camp. Well, to their horror, the next morning, their child was gone. And further scouting, they found a trail as left by a snake, but this trail was 1 foot wide, So the man of the group went and followed the trail, and it went to a large ravine, a rocky crevice in the top of the butte. And he came back with news to the rest of the camp that the snake did take their child. So that was a warning for everybody to not camp up there on top. So I hope everybody stays well, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Dennis. And I would like to bring in for a moment Leslie Aukia has joined us. If you'd like to just introduce yourself, Leslie, if you are. Hey, come on, there you are.
Hi, Hank. Is that Hank? Aloha, aloha mai. It's Leslie. I think all of you, if not most. Kanaka, Hawaiian, Hawaii, part of Rising Voices and part of the IPN. Fortunate to be in your guys' presence and just talk about what's happening at this time of COVID. Not sure what was discussed earlier. Sorry, I had to get off for a work meeting. I am still working. I work for the state. Just became the burial site specialist for the island of Oahu. So I take care of our iwi kupuna that have been dug up secondary to shoreline erosion, climate change, and also construction. And so that's my job now. We have things happening every day because of it, but it doesn't stop during this COVID-19 pandemic. So anyway, just a little thing. I won't be too long because I'm sure you have all gotten into it. I'm just seeing a big difference between community versus non-community versus individuality. Our communities are coming together during this time, even though we are probably the poorest out there. We all live together. So family communities is not a stranger here. We have over 10 people sometimes to a home. And so there's a lot of diversity that's happening and a lot of separation between the classes. Usually we're the lowest on the lows for the statistics of homelessness, health, economic welfare, jobs. And so at this time, what we are seeing is that we are actually the ones that are thriving during this time because we're falling back to our fishermen, our farmers, and our community, our families. And so it's interesting that traditions are coming back or being once again focused on and sharing our harvest or sharing whatever you get from the ocean as well as what you're planting. It's all coming back again. One thing I didn't speak about in the last call that we had earlier this morning, which most of you were on, was that the whole spirituality, religious factor has once again come through where, at some points we have anxiety during this time and not knowing the uncertain really of where we're going, what's going to happen, if we're going to be sick, caring for our elders, our children, family members. So you can have anxiety, but what's happening is that Mo'olelo is coming back. So it's our stories. It's our prayers to our many gods that we have here in Hawaii for Hawaiian people. And so the spirituality is coming back to calm us during a time that we see a lot of chaos, a lot of hatred between the peoples. Usually it's going to be native versus non-native. And we see that here in Hawaii. We do fall back on tourism, so it is nice not to have them here at this point. However, we do need them. So, it's that dichotomy, we'd love not to have them. But with them not here, many have lost their jobs. And what we're seeing in Waikiki is that the oceans are clean. There's no suntan lotion. There's just it's another state of what Waikiki used to look like about 100 years ago. And what we're seeing is that the native population is now going back into Waikiki, whereas before you wouldn't want to go there. It was just too dirty. There's too many people walking into you. So it feels like we've taken back some of our sacred spaces. We're allowed to be in the ocean. We're allowed to now go hiking and to pick our medicinal plants. And so really it's a refocus on who we are, who we've always been. And I think that's the positive thing that's coming out of it. Of course, the negative thing is that there's a lot of families that are going homeless, that have to move in with other extended family members. Forget the racism that we all face every day just by being Native. It's how do we survive? How do we eat? And it's just so helpful to have people that will offer their crops to you. And so I'm from Maui. I live on Oahu, but I have uncles that are farmers on Maui that have been sending their harvest to me and to my family. So things like that are happening a lot. We're taking advantage of the air cargo. We're also taking advantage of drive-bys where there'll be Hawaiian groups and organic farmers that no longer can give their crops to restaurants. And so they're giving it free to the community. And who we see in line is local people, Hawaiian people. We don't see any white people. And so right there's a diversity of they can actually afford things. Local people cannot. We're also seeing the prices go up. And so I think the last meeting we saw that across the board, we're all sharing in the dynamics. There are certain things that are going on across the board. I like to look at things in a positive, only because I've lived my life as a Hawaiian, and there's racism from the very get-go, right? It's intergenerational. And so at what point do we start looking for the future and how we can change things? And so that's where I'm at, to look at solutions, to create pathways. And I see that the community is doing it themselves. Yeah, it's organic, it's grassroots. And it's part of our history as being Hawaiian, being Kanaka. And so taking a step back, how do we then help the rest of the world or certain parts of the world to see how we're doing it, how we're having our management plans that focus around agriculture or also fish ponds, but also the spiritual belief in the Native Foundation. How do we incorporate that together? And so it's really a spotlight for us to show the world how we do it and how having our knowledge and our collaboration can really help with the future more than ever today, right? We always speak about this for the last 8 years, but we're not just speaking about it, we actually do have the knowledge. And so this is the time. I feel that it's our time to shine. And if no one wants to hear it, that's fine, but that means our tribes and our nations and our Hui can thrive within the system that continues to oppress us. So yeah, that's all I have to say. I hope I didn't repeat or I'm going on another tangent, but it's kind of hard not to. Everyone is just so rich in their knowledge and their mana'o, really. And so I thank you for listening to me. And yeah, I'll stop talking. Mahalo.
Well, I would personally vote that you never stop talking. So reel back that last part, and otherwise, huge thank you, Leslie, and for sharing, and to Dennis's story just before. And I think, a common thread that you both shared is really this deep flow and connection from past to future to shape and guide where we are in the present and where it is that we are going together. And I'll turn it over to Alyssa now to share some thoughts of where the specifically the conversation around phenology has been with this broader group and family, and ideas that we would all like to share, and thinking about actions moving forward to get us going. As Leslie said, right, that this is about finding those pathways forward together. So Alyssa, over to you.
Yeah, so I am going to kind of help pull into our consciousness what we said at Rising Voices 7 in the Phenology breakout, kind of help us touch back on that. I think of those meetings where we get together in person and just picture ourselves now under the pavilion at NCAR in the sunshine, and this chance to touch in with each other on all of these complex journeys that we're on. So looking at what we said last year in the phonology breakouts, we talked a lot about language and how a lot of inequity and kind of poor thinking is built into the language. The word phenology itself being a Western science word, and there not being a perfect way that we could just sort of say it differently. So maybe on some level accepting the imperfection in that or questioning it. We talked about the so power imbalances being sort of baked in everywhere, baked into grant calls for proposals, baked into the way the privileging of the written word over the spoken word, and how there's a lot of in order for things to work, we have to push back against the system that we're inside and that's inside of us too. Emphasis on thinking back into the history and being conscious of where all of us stand in the history and what our responsibilities are because of that. The absolute essentialness of consent and benefit to Indigenous communities of any work that is going to happen. We talked about the themes of respect, responsibility, and reciprocity, respecting traditions as well as privacy, taking responsibility when mistakes are made, knowing that we're going to make mistakes and not be perfect, and honesty and authenticity is the way to go, and showing up for the long term. The land, you know, I think this might have been in my breakout group. I remember we were talking about like decolonizing not being a metaphor. You know, you have to think about the land where you are and think about land return as all part of the picture. You know, you can't do like one kind of decolonizing without the full picture. So I think there can be a lot of questioning and critical lens and philosophical change that particularly like the Western trained researchers journey needs to go on. And we talked about different ways to make more of an on-ramp for Western researchers that want to engage with Indigenous communities. That was one direction forward. So in terms of like directions forward, there's like these philosophical changes in how we think and the structures that we operate in. Then we also thought so additional action recommendations that we had come up with last year, professional development or training for scientists to prepare them to enter a community, changes to funding structures and requests for proposals to include a focus on process, considering land tenure, increased understanding of laws, impacts of fragmentation and human changes to genetic resources, integrating the bigger phenology in the bigger sense, Indigenous epistemology, history, language, spirituality, healing, animals as well as plants, all relatives. And also establishing a space to access resources authored by Indigenous people, ask and answer questions, and show successes. And then we also talked about how we evaluate progress and are accountable to each other. So sort of saying this all in preface to reconnect us where we were last year and to set the stage for talking about where we've come and where we're going.
Thank you, Alyssa. Sorry, I wasn't sure if I was on mute or, yeah. There's always this like balance between, yay, the technology's working, and technology. So now really, I mean, what we like to do is, you know, to open it up to folks around the room of sharing about, you know, what are the kind of the phenology related actions that you've been participating in or witnessed in the last year? What are, you know, what are you experiencing right now? What are you witnessing? I think that we're all seeing really distinct changes happening. And I know that this came up too in the Indigenous Phenology Network had put out a survey to the IPN family, and if ideas around that came up, that, you know, if Katie, if you'd like to share, and then thinking about, you know, kind of around the room, if people want to share what you're seeing now and what the actions that you've been taking over the past year and where you'd like to kind of see this go. What are your ideas for the actions that we can take moving forward? And so are there, just maybe passed off to Katie for a moment, are there any particular kind of actions, ideas that were shared through the IPN's questionnaire that you'd like to kind of start us off with here?
Yeah, certainly. Oh, just to kind of preface the survey a little bit. So I've been involved with IPN actually before I attended my first Rising Voices. And I think it's been 5 years or so now that I've been involved. In that time, it's evolved from a very loose, very occasional conversation to kind of a more intentional group. And so we decided late in 2019 that we wanted to kind of formally evaluate how we're doing and get kind of feedback from the whole group. So to that end, we shared a survey. And the first question was really what's working well and what do you like about the IPN? And we heard a lot of terms repeated that included sharing, collaboration, connecting with one another, the opportunities to build relationships, camaraderie. And I feel like what the kind of overarching theme here was that the IPN is doing a good job supporting kind of the human connection aspect of the network. That people are reporting that they value the community, appreciate the opportunity to connect across regions, disciplines, and ways of knowing. And then we followed up by saying, you know, what would you like to see done differently? And kind of that responses to that question merged into the last question, which is what new ideas or where would you like to see it go in the future? And we heard a lot of comments about wanting to consider specific actions, that people want to work on something together and provide more opportunities or more forms of sharing. There were suggestions about building a website, using more social media, podcasts, presentations, developing a directory, and to engage specific groups like tribal colleges or land managers in projects. And what these comments really seem to say is that in the past 4 years, the network has laid the framework to really connect to one another. We've built rapport, we've built trust, and now there's momentum to keep going and to really do something more concrete together, which is really exciting. It's really invigorating and energizing, and has now led to a few developments. There's an Indigenous Phenology Facebook page that I believe was set up by Lomakai that is accessible to everyone. We are building a directory for people to voluntarily share information, ideas, contacts, and this prompt that Alyssa shared out that we're hoping to start right now in conversation, but also continue developing in the workshop on May 22nd. So the idea of what we have seen already and how we might use that as a springboard to future actions together. And that's what I've got. And would, if Bryan was on, he can also add information, or maybe that covers it.
So one of the things that we've been really excited about in the Indigenous Phenology Network in the last year is the opportunity to do a national conservation training series on Indigenous and Western approaches to phenology, and Samantha Chisholm Hatfield offered us a wonderful intro to Native approaches to phenology.
Everything around us is looked to for answers. So everything phenology based harks back to our environment. In Native systems, in TEK, any given entity is looking to the environment for those markers and for those answers. And that's how phenology is established for us. So the land and food are integral to our identity and history. There is no separation. And that's really important to understand, because TEK is a holistic discipline. It's very based in the environment, not components of the environment. There is no categorization. It's like an umbrella almost, but there has to be all of the pieces for it to work. One of the things that's really important that I first kind of found out was when my dad was talking about a meeting he had been invited to and other traditional hunters for the state. And years ago, they were very concerned here in Oregon about deer and the deer losing their hair. And my dad said, well, it's a bug that's chewing on the deer. And the other hunters proceeded to discuss and actually create an oral map of where this was occurring. So this state entity was very dismissive almost, but these hunters were describing, the timing, the location. They were describing all of it and what was going on, and they knew through TEK how this was happening, and they were able to tell the department what was going on. Unfortunately, that was not recorded and wrapped into the research, which later on came to find out it was termed hair loss syndrome and is caused by an invasive louse, which is further problematic because of climate change. It's happening in the lower regions, just as these traditional hunters were talking about, and then the deer were moving up, and in the higher elevations, those deer in the higher elevations were not having that hair loss and that infestation. So that was my first segue into seeing something as an adult that I really caught on to, that, oh wow, this is how this works. I grew up fairly traditionally, and it was always just a second nature thing for me. And then the hair loss syndrome is an occurrence. So phenology is really important, and it's a very vital piece of what TEK does and documents and observes, and that is a vital aspect. So phenology is really relied upon heavily in TEK systems, and those people who do traditional TEK and valid TEK. So another thing that we do as Siletz people, I always heard about eel ants, and when the eel ants are running, the eels will run. And I didn't know until probably my 20s that these were carpenter ants. I'd heard, I wasn't really interested in it, but I'd always heard since I was really young, I don't know, 3, 4, about the eel ants. And so I always termed them eel ants. So one of the occurrences, and there is absolutely no Western scientific correlation between these two species. When the eel ants come out, when the carpenter ants come out in late spring, the lamprey eel, which is a traditional food source for us, are running, and that was an indicator. The carpenter ants are an indicator species that these lamprey will be running, or used to be running, in the Siletz River. So even now, people are very aware of that connection of things of timing events. And then there's a lamprey eel that we cultivate in our hatchery. So these cultural markers are really heavily relied upon. This is Flathead Lake for the Salish Kootenai area. One of the aspects of timing for phenology is not only species, but these landscape markers as well, and events. So when I went to do my research on the Salish Kootenai Reservation, I was told, well, I was working with their tribal administration, and I called and I said, oh, well, how about this time? How about if I come out this time during the year? And they said, well, it hasn't snowed yet. And I instantly knew, as a Native person, there is a time for us culturally in the Northwest that's called Talking Storytime, and there aren't definitions to it as far as a season. However, it's generally understood that it's, from late fall through the winter until, spring starts. And there are only certain aspects of data, if you will, oral history that can be told during that period of time. So I knew that I couldn't come out yet and embark on my research. And so when I got there, they said, well, you're lucky because it snowed. It just snowed. And usually these mountaintops that you see are covered in snow. They're completely white. And so they were documenting their climate change issues and how they were going to embark on their cultural talking story time and how that impacted what else they would do, the hunting, the gathering, that sort of thing.
And and thank you, Katie, for the report out from the actions that folks have been talking about at the Indigenous Phenology Network, and really as a springboard to this room that we have here, that everyone coming together in partnership in community here today to discuss where have you been in the past year and thinking about actions related to phenology. What are you seeing and experiencing right now? I know Mia lives down, not far from where I am, and she'll probably attest. It has been just, I need to go change my clothes, right? Like, it's so hot here right now. And I know we go out, we've been like scrambling in our garden, just trying to get everything up because it just felt like overnight, in practically 12 hours, everything just came up and it feels like it's all about to go away and wilt. And so we've just been going in this scramble mode that we were not anticipating when it hit 90s here at the end of April, which just doesn't happen on the Central Coast too often. And so thinking about what are folks been doing, what you've been seeing and witnessing, experiencing, and thinking about this, as Leslie framed for us, of what's the path forward together, that this isn't a stop time. In some ways, there's been a bit of a slowdown, and in a lot of other ways, it's a huge ramp up. And I think folks are feeling that in all aspects of life, in all kinds of labor, and the labor that is often deeply undervalued in this society, the care work and support work that everyone who's part of this does, and that deeply connects to phenology and what you've been witnessing and experiencing. So I'd love to just open it up and to hear from all of you who are here with us today.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Sierra Green. I don't think she's on the call, but she and her colleagues at Northwestern Indian College have facilitated a wonderful student speaker series here in the last month. I'm sure some of you have listened into that as well. It's been so wonderful because sharing of local knowledge of native plants for edible and medicinal uses, but also specifically things that are so essential in times like this for keeping healthy and healing. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you so much, Bob. Yeah, and that's been Michelle Montgomery has been a lead on that with Sierra Green, and it's exciting to see that they're going to be having some more sessions coming up, and we'll be sharing those out with everyone, and hoping that folks can join in when you're available. And I think, Mia, did you have a virtual hand raise?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, since this pandemic has happened for us here, first thing we did was to make sure that our elders were taken care of. As someone who lives at home with my parents, take care of my parents, the first things that we saw were the disconnection, not being able to get out of the house. Not only are a lot of our elders getting forgetful and all of that, but just the fact that they can't get out, like for them being at such high risk, I think they felt even more isolated than we did. And so as Wish Toyo is providing boxes of vegetables and fruits to our relatives, weekly, making sure that they have something every beginning of the week, and working in, close relation with our farmers market, that we have good relations with all of those people. So we know that our produce is doing well. Reaching out also to through Wish Toil, and also our other relatives who are growing foods. And so we've been sharing our foods around with our community. Right now we're in the process of, in this season, gathering all of our seasonal medicines right now, because we understand that when our fall winter season comes, which is the time that we always prepare for sickness and for not being able to get out to gather and for different weather, we realize that with this pandemic that's happening and the virus going around, we're going to have a lot more sickness, and we need to make sure that our people are fortified against the small sicknesses so that we can maintain our health for the bigger sicknesses. And so right now, collectively, we're gathering our traditional medicines, creating a traditional medicine cabinet, apothecary, whatever you'd like to call it, a place where we are actively gathering the medicine, drying it, making it, tincturing it, all of that, so that when that time comes, we have an abundance of that. And so through one of the programs at Wish Toyo, the Silkstone Plant Mentorship Program, which is a program that we have, which is was started because we realized that we didn't have a lot of our traditional plant knowledge, plant medicine, nutrition knowledge with our youth and with some of our older people like myself. And so we started asking and realized that a lot of our elders who had that knowledge are no longer with us. We saw that need, and we created the Silkstone Plant Mentorship Program so that we could start sharing that traditional knowledge back again into the community and telling people why it's important. Telling them, hey, look, this is why we did it, because our elders are gone, because it was almost forgotten. And so now we're bringing it back. And so through that, not only are we going out to gather, but we are the ones making the medicine. We will be the ones holding the medicine, and we will be able to better help our communities. And so that's kind of what we're doing right now, and trying to help our people. Earlier, someone mentioned anxiety and depression that happens. And, I've definitely been stuck in that. This has been a difficult time for me, but having our community and these tasks, I guess, these responsibilities for our other communities has helped bring me out of that and give me that purpose, because through Wish Toyo, we're not just a nonprofit, we are a cultural nonprofit. And so it is about our culture that we have the nonprofit. And so, not just a basic regular workforces, but our cultural work that needs to be done. And so being able to hold that and have that as part of my work has been really helpful to me and my mental health. And so also helping others connect to those kind of things to help them with their mental health has also been something that we've been focusing closely on and helping our communities with. So right now we're in the spring season, and we've kind of laid out our game plan already of how many of us do we have in all of our areas that has this knowledge. And so taking this time to not only go out on our own, maintaining our 6 feet distance at least from each other as we're gathering, but also where can we gather from, who has the different medicines, and making that plan for next season. Okay, this season, it's interesting, this spring, right now we should be gathering certain things. The amazing thing is that because this heat happened, our plants jumped the gun. So we're behind already. So we have to, you know, reassess every day, every week, and make a new plan every week so that we can stay in contact. And also just making note of that for next year. And also making note of that in our brains to share with each other. Remember when we had that really great wind, rain, and it was beautiful. And then immediately after we had this intense heat. Not only did it make some plants just grow real fast and bloom, but it made some plants pop out of the ground and then just killed them back. So, you know, visually seeing that and taking note so that, you know, that's part of our knowledge that we will share again, you know, next year and next year and next year and next generation and my children and my grandchildren. So that's been helping me. And that's, you know, one thing that I'm hopeful for, because I think that we kind of lost grip for a little bit. And I feel like this time made us pause, made us take a look at what is really important. And what is really important is our relationship with the land and with each other, and not taking care of just me in this one house, but taking care of our community, because only through our communities are we strong. So that's what we've been doing.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think everyone can agree. You know, pointing out how much of that intergenerational care and support and uplifting that you're doing, and this kind of level of simultaneous disaster preparedness, while also adaptation and action as you're witnessing those changes in real time. And you definitely took me back for a moment to the smell of that rain recently. And I'd like to pause in that for a moment to go back and enjoy that. Thank you so much. Elaine, I know that you've had your hand up, if you'd like to say something.
Yes, I would like to share well, first of all, that really what you shared, Mia, resonates here in Alaska, because we are very concerned about not only the elders in our communities, but also our villages are very vulnerable, and because they do not have any capacity at all to deal with a COVID case. Even just isolating, you know, is hard enough because everybody lives together and in close quarters. And so there is a ban, you know, for travel to villages. And even though our governor is wanting to, it has started to open up, you know, some things still with self-isolation and masks. Some villages are still opting to, you know, have their villages off limits to out of town people. But the one that I would like to share is our Phenology project. So we have this Arctic and Earth Science where we have, we invite educators, formal and informal educators, as well as community members to attend this intense workshop where, because before they come to the workshop, it's a climate change education workshop. Before they come, they already know what problem or issue they might want to address as part of being part of the project. And so some people have chosen to address the the availability of berries or the variability of berries. And so we partnered. There's another project that both Katie Spellman is leading it, and I'm co-lead on that. And so the berry project that has had communities as well as students involved in the project. And so what the berries, what the observations for the phenology of the berries are, you know, whether this is through the fall and the winter season, to try and see how many are unripe berries, ripe, rotten, dried up, or damaged. There has not been any study before done on this, and it would affect the relatives, the animals that depend on these berries during the fall and the winter. And so we've had individuals as well as after school classes observe. So we've had 1,501 winter berry volunteers across Alaska with about 15,183 observations of the berries, and the monitoring sites span tundra, boreal, and coastal. And so there were 4 berries that we decided to observe across, but then communities are welcome to observe an additional berry that might be important to their community, and some tribal villages have opted to do that, which was great. So the communities and students have been observing the lowbush or the lowbush cranberry or lingonberries, the prickly rose, the highbush cranberry, and the crowberries. And as part of the, this is an NSF-funded project, and as part of it, we also had research on the effectiveness of different strategies of working with the students in their learning. And part of the strategies is the storytelling part. And so we've had community storytelling events. And so students, as they, before and after they had collected data, had, they tell their own stories or stories that were told to them by their elders and other relatives. And they also engaged in, as after they were looking at the data, on telling a story about what would things look like if you have a do-nothing future, or if you think you are able to do some things to improve the future of berries, providing the vitamins and the sustenance, and as part of the subsistence lifestyle of villages. And so it's going to be we have 2017 and 2018, and trying to finish up the 2019-2020 berry season. And I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you so much, Elena. And I think that what's great too about everyone kind of who's on today too, is there's so much that we're seeing of commonalities across regions, right? That everyone's, has very specific experiences, but then that there's a lot of threads that tie us together. And I'm curious, I know Melanie had to hop off for her grandkids, and I think a lot of us would like to just go with her and play with the kids. But we'll stay on a few more minutes together. And I wonder if, Hannah, if you'd like to share, if that resonates at all with some of the work that you and Melanie and others are doing at the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission.
So I'll just tell you guys quickly about our project. And first, I just wanted to share that it snowed here last night. So I hear you talking about 90 degrees, still cold here. So at the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, we have a plant phenology study. We're looking at 10 different plant beings in 2 study sites, and this is the 5th year of our study. So we've been out there a lot, a couple times a week now, and we're seeing trees just flowering out. Overall, we're just seeing a ton of variability from year to year, number of fruits and timing and everything like that. So, and then Melanie is our TEK specialist, and she's been doing interviews with our member tribal communities and talking with them about indicators, when to know, how to know when to harvest different things. And we're trying our best to converge those two sources, the field work and then what we're hearing about what timing was like historically and what people are seeing for timing today. So it's really interesting. We're learning a lot as we're going. And it just sounds like there's so much overlap with all of the work that you guys are doing. So it's great to hear.
Thank you for sharing that, Hannah. And I think maybe we should just meet in the middle of somewhere between the snowy last night and the 90s here.
You mean Colorado?
There you go. Y'all are sitting where we should be. I did want to come around. Ava, I know you're on the phone there. If you can hear us okay, if there was anything that you would like to bring in and share from where you are in Colorado.
Yeah, I've been spending a lot of time in isolation because I'm here by myself. My husband has gone to Oklahoma because of a funeral. So I'm just thinking any way I want to, and sometimes it's scary, the way my thinking goes. But I depend on this bumper sticker. Don't believe everything you think to calm me down. But one of the things that I'm doing here in isolation is I'm visiting with families in all of the tribes, most of the tribes around the country, not most, but many. And that community involvement is really key to the survival of this coronavirus. But one of the calls that I had was really disturbing. It was from a young urban firefighter. She is going to be doing firefighting training. She's a California Indian. And she said, we're never going to be who we used to be. And she said, I wish that she was disturbed by some people not coming up to reality, well, that's not the way we do it. That's not the way we are. And she said, well, we are like that. We don't care, or we are not taking care of each other. She had a really negative view of how tribal people are. And I've been thinking about that. And I think we were always in motion. We've always been in motion, in change and adaptation. And for me, tradition is that. It's change and adaptation for what works for us, what we like. And if it works, then we're going to start using that information and that action. But for me, I'm worried about that kind of thinking. She's an urban person, and 74% of Native Americans in the United States, that's a big percentage. 74% of us are urban Indians. We're not connected to the land in the way that most of the people that I've been listening to are. They don't have access to elders with knowledge for traditional knowledges to be passed on, responsibilities. We're just out here. For instance, in Colorado, there's I think there's 46,000 Indians in the Denver area. That includes Boulder, and over 200 and maybe 250 different kinds of tribes here. But in what I do best is I'm a listener. I know how to get people to tell me stories, and one of the main thing that they want to be is they want to be who we are. They want to be who their grandparents were. They want to know how Lakotas lived around here, or Arapaho people, and they want that knowledge. They want that guide, that ethical guide, and the knowledge of how to use plants and Navajo tea. We all know about Navajo tea around here, and because the Navajos share that information with us. But a lot of the kids they said, we don't want that watered down stuff. We don't want that. We don't want new age people representing our behaviors, our knowledges. So I'm really concerned about that. And land is a key issue. We don't have any in this urban area. We don't have tribal lands. And Heather and I are talking to the Wild Bear School up in Nederland, where she lives, and they're going to offer use to Native Americans in whatever way they want to. It could be for, I think it could be for sweats, or it could be for gatherings, or we had been talking about a summer camp, a 3-day summer camp, talking about the things that we're talking about, climate change and things like that. But there's a school that was scheduled to open its doors this fall. It's for Indigenous students, and they'll drive around the city and pick up the kids, and they'll teach them Indian history. And I think there's 2 languages that they're going to teach there, Lakota and Navajo, who are the most populous of the tribes here. And so there are teachers, fluent teachers, who are available to teach that, and they would probably teach other languages as well. But our languages, our kids really want to learn their languages. They're sacred connections to who we are, to our past, and to our lands, and to all living things. Those languages are embedded in us as well. So I think we can, we should have access to them the way this young group of Indians, and most of them are urban Indians, and they were born and raised here, and maybe have gone to different places to get their education. But there's PhDs, masters, and graduate students of all kinds here, and they're the ones who made the initiative to have address this need, this desire for Indian people to come together and see each other, instead of being the only one, if not the only one in their class in the whole school, because none of us are neighbors. We're miles apart as a neighbor, but most of us know each other. I don't think I know all 46,000, but I know quite a bit. And one way that we have social gatherings is powwows and different conferences, always having a powwow, and most of us know each other in the community. So there's a really need to support urban Indians and their desire to be connected to this land. And it's all of our land. This land is ours. It's our relative. Wherever we live, it's our relative. We are related to it. We come from this place. We didn't come from Mars. Well, maybe we did, but I heard this one story. I digress, but I heard this one story. This guy from Montana, I don't remember his tribe. I only met him one time, and he said, years ago, there was another place like this, like the earth, our earth. There was another place like this, and the same thing that's happening to here. We didn't take care of it. We didn't respect it. We didn't love it enough to take care of it. That place died, but the Indian spirits, we lived there. The Indian spirits went to another place, and I think he meant Earth. This is how we got here. And but that's just the story. I've never seen him since, and I've only started to try to reconnect with him to hear the rest of that story. But there's our knowledges are so important, because it's not just knowledges, it's the love and respect of all life that those knowledges bring to us. And if we're all going to be here, if we're going to live, and the earth spirit is to live, we have to work together. And it's hard for me too, because I grew up on a reservation. I grew up at Wind River at Arapahoe, Wyoming, and the racism there was pretty bad on the border town. And, you know, it's real hard for me to try to forget about that kind of disrespectful behavior that I had the experience of having growing up and going to school there in town one year. It's disturbing that people can be like that to you just because of who you are. And but being here in Boulder, I'm so thankful that to finally run into people like Heather and Julie and the other people that I met through this organization, Rising Voices, and for all of the scientists, the people who are Indians, who are scientists, for the love that they have and the knowledges that they have for us to figure out how we're going to be in the future, how we're going to protect and love life, all life. And I heard somebody, I think it was Mia, talking about how their elders had not passed on their knowledge, and it's a big concern of mine. I was trying to have a request some land from someplace around here in Boulder, this $1 million area, one of the most expensive spots in the country. And I think it'll happen. It could happen, but the purpose was to have an Indigenous Knowledge Center and to support those people who have that knowledge and recognize them, because there's so much support and encouragement for academic achievement to receive that kind of education, but not much support for the holders of Indigenous knowledge, because you can't just have it. The way I understand it, you have to earn it, and it's a responsibility. And they need support too. I mean, they probably use electricity, etc. So they need funds. I keep hearing a noise. I'll end with that brief description, but I think there needs to be a really support of Indigenous knowledges. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ava. And you know, I think that carries us deeply into, you know, the ask to everyone who's watching this and part of the Rising Voices and Indigenous Phenology Network families of let us hear from you of what are you experiencing, of sharing your observations at this time, of considering ideas that have been raised today and some of the deep themes of I kept coming back to kind of just this idea of how what so many people were talking about, of if we radically listen to each other, if we of focusing on the relationships, of radically listening not just to our human relatives, but to all the non-human relatives as well, and how this ties together across the regions in which we all find ourselves, of a lot of commonalities, and coming together around those common concerns and common actions that we can take together in collaboration. And as you view this, we hope that you'll be kind of motivated and encouraged to share with the community, and that we'll be sending out the opportunity to send in your own videos. And then joining us on May 22nd, we're going to have a full Phenology working group discussion. And one positive reason for while we deeply miss being together in person, and we will do that as soon as it is safe to do so, we promise you. But in this interim, a positive aspect about our current situation is if you haven't gotten to be part of these phenology conversations before, join this conversation. If you've been part of it for the past almost decade, continue to join the conversation. And so all are welcome into this, and we very much hope that you will participate, that we can learn together and share together and imagine the ways that we can continue to move forward together. With that, a huge, huge gratitude and appreciation for everyone who has taken their time and energy and to be with us today, to all of you out there for being part of this journey with us, and always and forever to Chris for everything that she gave to this community and still continues to give, and she remains with us as we move forward. With that, we'll be moving into our closing for today with Kalani and Hank, who will carry us forward to conclude this session and transition into our time all together in a couple weeks. We thank you all for joining us today.